Good morning, everyone. Michelle Dunaway here. Welcome to my studio. I am so excited to join you this morning and to bring you a special interview with an artist and friend I greatly admire, Richard Schmid. So Richard and his lovely wife, Nancy Guzik, who's also a master artist, will be joining us from their home today and participating in this virtual conversation. We Zoom often and keep in touch. Everything's kind of a new normal in 2020. And I'm so happy that we can bring all of you into this conversation. I have known Richard and Nancy about 10 years. And although I had met them previously at book signings and a couple of art shows, it was in 2010 when my Painting of Jane Seymour's Daughters was selected as finalist in Portrait Society that Richard called me on the phone and invited me out to his studio and home to paint with him and Nancy, which was a dream come true. I, of course, had known of Richard's work and garnered inspiration from it for many years prior to meeting him. Most of us have the book Alla Prima, which was revolutionary in that it shared so much information so openly to help with the technical side of painting. And one of the things I really enjoy when getting together with Richard and Nancy and us spending time painting in their home are the many discussions we have on art, some technical, but often it veers to the philosophical and the mindset of creating art, which I think is so important to how we create. And you know, we delve into, in this conversation, Richard delves into some of the technical side, but also some of the philosophical side, which I think you're going to really enjoy. So without further ado, here's Richard Schmid and Nancy Guzik.
Good morning.
Good morning again.
So, Richard, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm sure everyone at Portrait Society is thrilled to hear from you, and you too, Nancy. And I have one of your paintings on the easel behind me.
I'm looking forward to seeing what I'm going to say. I have no idea what I'm going to say because I don't know what you're going to ask me.
Well, you always say great things, so it's going to be fun. I just wanted this to be like a conversation rather than the standard interview. Everyone knows who you are, knows your background. Everyone has Alla Prima.
Look, it's really interesting to start out the way we're starting this out, because you're sitting there and over your right shoulder is a wonderful, I shouldn't say that wonderful portrait of you, but that unforgettable portrait of you that we did, I don't know how long ago, in, where was it, my studio or your studio?
My studio.
It was in Nancy's studio. And Scott Burdick was there, and he had put two of his cameras, I think, on me when we started. And I didn't quite finish the portrait of you in the first day, and it was getting dark, as I recall. Mm-hmm. And so then we came back the next morning, and I wanted to make a few corrections. I wanted to redo the mouth. I did a good job on it the first day, but the second day I noticed it wasn't in exactly the right position I wanted it in relation to the bottom of your nose and your chin. So I started making that correction, and then when I made that correction, I needed to make another correction on your left eye, and I went up there. So that second day turned out to be a very interesting alterations of painting. It was good painting on there, but it was not quite in the right place. And
that was so inspiring to see that you left that in the video, the corrections.
Later, we decided that I had made these corrections in that the corrections were so interesting, and the reasons why I was making the corrections and how I was making the corrections were so interesting, that we decided to make a video out of it. And that's how it all came about. And then I started getting creative in the background, putting all those little extras behind you or left shoulder and so on, getting a little fantasy going there.
I like that. If you look at it, that Nancy's palette that you put behind, it's kind of mirrored over here on my own palette.
Oh, yes, yes.
But I remember that day because it was so spontaneous, and Scott did such a great job filming, and it was such a fun day. But one thing that really stuck in my mind, it was during a break, and we were just passing in the kitchen getting coffee, and it was right when you were correcting the mouth, and the mouth looked 90% there. It looked great. And most artists would have left it at that point. But you said, no, it's not just right. It's not your mouth. I'm going to take it off and redo it. And I had so much respect seeing you do that, and then respect seeing you do it in the video, leaving it in the video for people to learn. And you said, success isn't knowing you can get it perfect. It's knowing you can fix it.
Yes.
And
It's a thing that I put in, I think, the Alla Prima book or something, and that is, I was talking about confidence.
oh, that's right. It was confidence.
I was talking
Confidence.
about confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that confidence does not come from being able to do something perfectly. Confidence comes from knowing that if you don't do it perfectly, you can fix it.
That's good.
That's so important because
Yes, it is.
So the last time I was at your house, you took me into the garage and you had a stack of canvases that were portraits that I had never seen before, that have never been published, but soon to be published in your new portrait book.
Some of them, not all of them, but yeah, some of the portraits that I showed you will be featured in this book that I'm completing now. I can't say exactly when it's going to be finished, but we're down to the last couple of pages, and of course, right now with what's going on with the coronavirus and politics and all this stuff interfering with what used to be our normal way of producing books and videos. With all that going on, I can't say we have an exact date when this thing will be available, but we are, when we hope it will be, Nancy.
I don't know if we can get it by Christmas, but it'll be.
I think we'll have it by next spring.
Oh yeah, at least by next spring. And also that this first book, we had to make 2 books because there's so many paintings. And this first book is pretty much from the 60s to up to today. And then what I think he's going to do is the second book will be more about painting in groups and be about the palette and chisel, the Loveland Academy,
Yeah.
painting at Village Arts with the Putney painters. And you saw the stack of paintings that were from all of those groups that we have saved and moved, all the places you moved to. And
Yeah, there were so many stunning works. And one thing you had mentioned to me, Richard, I'd love to hear you talk about, is that seeing those paintings again took you back to those particular moments in time.
Yes.
You created them.
Yes. As soon as I saw the picture, I remembered just about everything about painting the picture. I remembered what the light was and where I was, and what the problems with the picture were going to be, and how I solved the problems, and how I changed, how I made changes, and so on. All those different things that happen when you set out to do a painting.
Mhm.
Well, we picked a few paintings that a couple of them really stuck in my mind from when I saw them at your house, and they're going to show them on the screen for the viewers. The first one is a portrait of a young boy. I don't know the actual title, but when we looked at it, I was really struck, to talk about technique for a little bit, of how you turned the form and modeled the form with color temperature rather than values, especially around the eye and the light area.
It's actually, my ability to do this stems from my interest in the way paintings were done before artists had the option of painting in dramatically different light and shadow. They didn't have light bulbs, and they didn't take people out into the sunlight and paint them. They just had the rather subdued lighting of the indoors where they worked. So they didn't have very dramatic lighting. This is the kind of lighting that you see in Renaissance pictures and so on, and chiaroscuro and light and shadow and creating pictures and that thing didn't come until a little bit after the Renaissance, and then it did come in a big way as soon as we reached the time of French Impressionism, where artists got out of their studios and went out and painted in bright sunlight and so on. And that's when we got more dramatic lighting in portraits and figurative things. This is more like a painting would be done from somebody who lived in the period of the Renaissance and then into the classical period that followed that.
Yeah, I love the sense of color in the lights. I see a lot of warms and cools in the same value that
Yes.
are really luminous.
Thank you.
So the second painting is a portrait of your lovely wife, Nancy, that was in the stack you showed me in the garage, and really thought this one had such great dynamic brushwork and simplification of values.
Yes, in fact, this picture looks very dramatic because of the other things in the picture, in this picture that were not in the picture of the young boy. For example, she's wearing a very dark red robe, and then around her neck, it's a white sort of collar. She might have had a nightgown on or something, or some kind of a shirt on underneath that. So this painting of Nancy has features that would have occurred in the Dutch period of portrait painting, where they always used the dark clothes and then the white collar and dark hair, and maybe a hat on. Features by Rembrandt and others. And
can you talk a little bit about how you choose to paint the backgrounds and the peripheral abstraction? Because so many people ask me about that, and I know it's a mix of painting what you see in the periphery and also creating what you want the painting to look like.
Well, when I do these backgrounds, it can sometimes I will put something colorful or something of the value that I want in the background so that the face stands out and that it's not completely lost. And it can be a color change, or it can be a value difference or whatever. And then I like to create a design on the canvas by using that background value. And instead of just having the whole background look dark, as the Dutch did, I I think of the background as part of the design,
Hmm.
as part of the background.
Yes, it's so essential to the overall design or music of the painting. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so the third painting that we're going to show is the Painting of Nanette. That's in your new book.
Nanette.
Wow.
That is such a stunning.
Nanette was one of my favorite subjects. She was a charming little gal she was studying ballet, as a matter of fact.
She looks like a ballerina in the painting to me. She always
Yeah.
has.
And she had a natural grace about her, no matter what she did. She was very much like Nancy, no matter where she put her hands or no matter how she sat in a chair. She was, I didn't really have to tell her, move this or move that or change your arm, or, she just did everything so well that I just had to paint her. That's all. I didn't have to pose her.
So great when models are like that.
I know, but most models are apprehensive or nervous
Nervous. That's
to
good.
pose for an artist because they think they have to look a certain way in order for the artist to do a masterpiece or do a painting that's has grace to it, but that's the way she was normally. I mean, it was the way she was. I didn't have to ask her to change things, change the way she was sitting or change the way she was. I just had to decide whether I wanted to do her standing up or sitting down or whatever. And as a result, I've done, I don't know how many paintings I did of Nanette, and I also did a painting of Nanette and Nancy. Remember?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh, yes.
I'll have to find out where that painting
I'll find
is because it was a double portrait, and the two of them sitting together. I don't know what they were doing.
That was beautiful.
But it's always nice when you have a model who is naturally graceful in that sort of way, without appearing to try to look graceful, that it looks natural.
And what's interesting is because you've seen him with you and with others, how well you put models to ease when they pose, because you're usually posing them for a group also. You just do that so well.
Well, I have one of the ways that I get a really good pose out of a model is that when they come to sit for me, I tell them, oh, just go over there. I say, just go over there and sit down. And while I fix the colors on my palette, say, so they do, they just go over. And while I'm fixing the colors on my palette, I have one eye where I'm looking at them all the time. And they're not trying to pose, they're just being very natural. And when I see one of the very natural ways they're sitting, that's the one I say, that I try and get them back into that position when it is time to paint. See? So it's not so much as posing a model, but it's keeping my eye on the way they behave naturally, and then that's the one I select.
I so agree. People are the most beautiful when they don't realize they're being watched.
Yeah, especially children.
And I think that speaks to one of the things that I've often talked about when people ask about the experience of painting with you, is that, when you invited me out to Vermont to paint, I thought I was just going to be learning technique. But one of the things that I've learned the most from both you and Nancy is working with a model. You both have such a reverence for communicating with an individual and getting to know them. I mean, you're one of the only artists I really see when it's break time for painting. You're not fussing with your painting. You're engaging with the model. You're asking them about their background, where they're from, laughing with the model, and you really get to know them and have a joy. And I think that's so important when you're painting someone.
Yeah, I think this kind of contact with my model, it does two things. One, it brings them into partnership with the paint, with myself, in creating a work of art, so that they're not just something that I'm painting. They are part of the painting process itself.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
Because so many artists treat a model like a still life, when they're a living, breathing human being that deserves our respect and reverence and to be part of the process.
And that's the reason I always want to have a big mirror behind me when I paint, so that the model can see the painting unfold as I paint it.
Nice.
See, that's how you can really draw them into that thinking, draw them into the process.
And it helps them sit still. Because it helped me when you were painting me. I just watched you in the mirror, and it kept me from moving my head too much.
Before you go on,
Sure.
Asking about music, since that did that help you when him playing his music?
Oh yeah, I mean, and I think that I really see you move your arm and your brush to the timing of the music.
Yes.
I think adds a whole other element.
Yeah, that's true too.
To me, but music is part of the painting. You know, the music I select it helps me. I have painted with. I won't mention the names of well-known painters that I've painted with, but most of them want dead quiet when they paint. They don't want any conversation. They don't want any music. They have to have it completely, utterly quiet. See, whereas when I paint, I want all my senses to be stimulated.
Wow.
That is so important.
That's what goes into the painting, your state of mind.
Yes, I so agree. And that speaks again to how both you and Nancy get immersed in the process, not just the finished product, which is why I think your finished paintings end up so powerful, because of the attentiveness you put into the moment of creating them.
And you know what comes to mind too is that every painting I see of his is so full of joy. So it's just, you know, I always thought, well, where's that tube of paint? Joy. Music, it's the way he set up the model, it's all of that, and he sits down and his joy, the music, all your senses goes into your paintings, and your skill, all of it, you know.
I'm also thinking about what we're going to have for lunch.
Well, some of our best discussions would happen at lunch between painting breaks. And you told me a story once about when you first knew you wanted to be an artist, and it wasn't seeing a painting, but it was listening to a record of Johann Strauss when you were a little boy.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought maybe you could share that story.
Well, yes. Before of course, as a kid, I always loved drawing and stuff, but I wasn't, I never knew what being an artist was. But we had an old Victrola. I don't know if anybody knows what the word Victrola is. It's a wind-up record player, and it was in our attic. And there were a few old Decca records in the attic, and the only one that wasn't cracked, the records were made of some kind of plastic or something in those days, and most of the records were cracked, so you couldn't play them. But one that wasn't cracked was the one I would go in and play over and over again, and it was Johann Strauss's Emperor Waltz. And I played that over and over again. And
how old were you?
don't know, 7 or 8.
Wow.
I started doing that, yeah. And then when I got interested in music, a few years later, I mean, interested to the point where I would start to have music lessons. I was in grammar school. My sister was old. My sister was 8 years older than myself and my brother, and she had gotten an old upright piano that we put in our basement, and she painted it white and put red hearts on it and all kinds of. Because she liked to have parties for her friends, and someone would play the piano and they would dance and do all sorts of things. So when they weren't doing that, I would go over to the piano when I was downstairs in the basement working on my ship, and I would just plunk around on the keys, and that to me was so fascinating that you could do music that way, that I started taking piano lessons in the convent of our Catholic school.
Oh, wow.
The nuns would give piano lessons to children who, they would charge us for it, and it was like $2 a lesson or something. So that's when I first started taking piano lessons, was in the convent. Actually gave a little recital by the time I was 9 years old or so.
Really? That young? Wow.
Yeah.
That's so great. So, I mean, speaking to that, since you were a young boy and heard that and that inspired you, you always talk about music. Every time we paint together or have a painting session, you talk about the correlation between art and music. And
oh, yes, indeed, yes. It is for me. It may not be for most people, but the music is as important to me as my painting is.
wow, really?
Yes, yes. I'm fortunate that, I guess I'm fortunate in that I was not able to pursue music. There were certain things that interfered with it, like I had to go off and do my time in the Army, and then I moved to New York and I didn't have a piano and so on. And so my art became what I did as my major occupation. And but I never lost that love of music, and I learned about composers and music and musical periods and so on. I learned so much about that over the years, and I understood so much about music when I was listening to it as I painted, and I began to see things about music that were in a way identical with things I was using in my paintings, such as harmony and technique and expression, all these things that we use in painting that have their counterpart in music.
Wow, it's so true. It's fascinating.
Yes, it is fascinating.
I remember being struck, it was some of the first times I painted with you both, that you would bring in certain CDs that you had created of certain songs in order that you wanted to play during a specific painting session. So you put a lot of thought into the music, and
yes.
I loved it. We have the same taste in music. So, so one of the last one of the other paintings we're going to show from the book is the one of Gretchen and Jamie.
Oh, yes.
And I was wondering your thoughts on, did you do this all from life, or your thoughts on going from doing a head study to doing a more elaborate finished painting with two people and two sets of hands? And
This was I did a small sketch of the two of these painting, and then I did a slightly under life-size painting of Jamie and Gretchen, which is the painting we're looking at here. So I could get a lot more detail in the
Wow,
hand.
I didn't realize it was that big.
It is. It's a large painting.
Wow.
And I think this painting also went to an exhibition in China, in Beijing, when China finally opened up. So I love doing this painting. It took me about 3 weeks or so to do it because it was a pretty large painting. But Gretchen's little feet are interesting, and the way she's holding her hands, and then that way Jamie is holding her hands, fixing her hair. The whole thing was the quiet moment between these two wonderful, beautiful young girls.
Mm-hmm.
And the color harmony, as you can see, is so very close. There's nothing that stands out that doesn't belong there. Nothing in the way of color that could not happen in this lighting situation.
That's what struck me, the beautiful color harmony and the luminosity of all the lighter colors and parts. Mm-hmm. So we have one more painting. So this painting, Wash Day, that's in your new book, the first time I saw this was when you showed it in a slideshow at your retrospective at the Butler, and you said something about romanticism.
Let's get his glasses.
Yeah, I'll wait. Yes, the first time I saw that painting, Wash Day, was in a slideshow at your Butler retrospective.
Yeah, now, the one I'm pointing out here, that's the original painting. Mm-hmm. And this is a monochrome painting of this one, but I think this one is a smaller version.
Oh, I'd never seen the monochrome. That's great. Well, I think this painting's so exquisite, and I wanted to read something to you and for our audience, which is a quote by you that you said at the lecture, and I quickly scribbled it down word for word in my sketchbook because I thought it was so poignant. And you had this painting on the screen and you said, "The thing about romanticism is you can take the most ordinary thing. It doesn't even have to be intensely emotional. Romanticism is about everything we do, the most commonplace as well as the most impassioned. That whole spectrum and everything in between is legitimate subject matter for art. And the reason it becomes art is not so much for what it is, but how we experience it. And that's why a painting of a woman hanging up clothes, reaching for a clothespin can take your breath away."
Yes, that's true.
We'll put that in the book. Thank you. You can send it to me. That's great.
It's a great quote, and I think that painting so exemplifies that.
I think that is that idea of the ordinary things that ordinary people do when they're expressed in art by a sensitive painter and a skillful painter can become breathtaking moments that we can never forget.
Yeah.
All right? And do you know that for some of the great music that that came out of Italy, or was that France? No, that was Italian. La Boheme, for example. Aida, so many of these wonderful, wonderful operas were not necessarily about great people. They were about ordinary people. about one of my favorite pieces of music is called Musetta's Waltz, which is a little interim piece of music from La Boheme, from Great Opera, Grand Opera. So yes, it's the. I think it's the experience that we have as artists, as painters, that we can enjoy, which are not experiences that people who don't do art or write about art or sing about art who do not have a way of translating their own experiences of life into a form that other people can enjoy with them. That we have that ability to do that to the extent that our skill will allow. If we're very skillful, what we do will be immortal, so to speak. And no matter how humble the subject is, the way we perceive it will live on and on, because that's where the beauty is. Not in the object itself, but how we perceive it.
Very beautifully said.
Okay.
So the picture that they're going to see right now, this picture is of you selling paintings on the streets in New York that Nancy sent me.
Yes.
Young and handsome man there. Oh.
Yeah.
About how old are you in this picture?
Here?
Uh-huh.
I would say I was 21, maybe. 20.
Wow, really?
Yeah. I had just come to New York that day from Chicago. I drove there from Chicago. And Greenwich Village had the annual, twice annual Greenwich Village Art Show. And it would involve the whole area of Greenwich Village, from 8th Street, 5th Avenue, the whole park itself, and it just went on and on. There were, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of artists out there. Well, and all of them used photographs. I was the only one who could paint from life because of my training.
And something else I wanted to ask you about is you paint so much from life, including landscapes and painting in plein air. And I remember over lunch one day you shared a story with me about how you traveled on a steamer ship.
Yeah, I used to travel on cargo ships, ocean-going cargo ships.
And where did you go?
Oh, they would usually leave from New York Harbor, and they'd go out into the Atlantic Ocean, and we'd stop at ports in Jamaica and Cuba, and then we'd go further west, and we'd go through the Panama Canal, and then we'd go up the coast of the east coast of South America, and stop at Chile and Valparaiso, Ecuador, and go all the way down to the tip of South America, or the upper tip of South America, and then turn around and drop off our cargo. And then on the way back, we'd stop at all of those ports before we got back to the Panama Canal, and we would load up the ship with bananas. Tons and tons of bananas, which we brought back to New York. And
so I told you when you painted in Alaska, you got the colors of the sky and the snow
Yes.
better than anyone I've seen, because having grown up in Alaska, like I can tell when it's not right. And so have you always painted from life outdoors?
Everything was from life. Everything.
In Alaska.
Yeah. And the thing was that, you know, who was with me?
Steve, was it Steve, Sandy Scott, Albert Handel, and Paul Mullally.
And Paul Mullally, yeah. And Paul and I heard all about the grizzly bears up in Alaska. So
yes, that's the big painting hazard.
Paul and I were fully loaded with, he had a double-barreled automatic shotgun, and I had the world's most powerful revolver. Plus, I think I had a shotgun as well, or
that's true.
Something. We were ready for bears. We painted, and we saw, you know, everywhere we went, not everywhere, but in many places we went in Alaska, we saw evidence on the trail or along the beach of salmon that had been caught by the bears. And the salmon, I mean, the bears always, they don't eat the whole fish. They like the tasty insides of a fish. And so they rip it open with their claws and throw the rest away. And so that's how we knew that the bears were present, because they were half-eaten fish all over.
And it was dangerous.
We never encountered a bear ourselves. We were
That's good, because we want you to be here with us now, and you may not have been otherwise.
But what else was interesting about Alaska was, I mean, when we go to England or when we travel or here, he does 2 paintings a day, you know, in the morning and in the afternoon, usually. And in Alaska, he could do 3 because of all the light. We would forget that there was 22 hours of light. So we'd come to another port and it'd be so exciting, and out would come the paints.
Yes, and the best light is like from 11 o'clock at night till 3 in the morning, sometimes in Alaska. These lingering sunsets.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Plus, it was so beautifully overcast a lot of times, or foggy, which
yes.
So that, yeah.
And your most recent painting trip a few years back was to Scotland, correct?
England and Scotland, yeah.
In Scotland.
It was the whole British Isles. We painted all over the place, including Ireland.
Oh, I didn't realize you went there.
Wales, yeah.
And Wales, yeah.
Well, I know you were out there for commission, right? For Abbotsford, the home of Sir Walter Scott?
Yes, but that wasn't our first trip to England. That was, I think, our 3rd trip to England.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because we had a lot of, we did 2 trips at least. Nancy went there by herself once before I went there. Yeah. And she was very resourceful, and she learned to drive on the correct side of the road, and before I ever drove there.
That was fun for me.
I'm a little scared to try that. Can you share some of the experience of painting at Abbotsford?
Abbotsford?
You were commissioned to do a painting.
Huh?
You were commissioned to do that painting, correct?
I was commissioned to do it, yeah. I wanted to paint the castle from life, because I wanted to see what the actual light was, what the light temperature and the color changes and so on. And so I sat up on a little rise, a little bit of a hill, where I could look and see the entire castle and the castle walls on both sides of it. And Nancy was out there helping me with my gear and setting up the easel. And Kristen was there too. And of course, as soon as I started painting, it started raining.
Yeah, because in Scotland, when I was there, it rains every 20 minutes.
That's right.
Great
So
Scottish weather.
Kristen her job was to hold the umbrella while was there to hand me my brushes when I needed them. Of course, Kristen held the umbrella in such a way that the water coming off the umbrella went right down the back of my neck.
Yeah.
So I was stimulated.
Kept you awake for the painting experience.
But it was worth it. It was really worth it. The whole thing, good or bad weather, I didn't care. I just love the British Isles. I had a lot of my background is from my mother, who was English, my grandfather, who was English. He was a stone carver in Manchester, England. And,
Oh, wow.
yeah, and there was so many things about being raised in that family with my mother and grandfather. We had a lot of German influence because my father was from Passau, Germany. But most of my father's influence was about certain foods that my mother would cook for him. The rest of it, though, was pretty much the English Norwegian heritage that I had.
Yeah, out of all the places I've traveled, England and Scotland are some of the most beautiful, I thought.
Yeah.
Which we have a mutual friend in England whose brushes we use.
Oh, yes.
Rosemary brushes.
My brushes, yeah.
So I was curious, how many studies did you do of Abbotsford before you painted your large painting?
Oh, from life?
Yeah.
I did 2 or 3 from life.
Mm-hmm.
Because you did both a watercolor and an oil, didn't you?
Yes, yes. And then I did a couple of sketches around the other side, the back side of Abbotsford too, which was very beautiful. The back side of the castle.
Is that your biggest painting you've ever done, or have you done? It was pretty large.
I think it was the biggest painting I ever did, aside from a mural that I did in a Catholic church in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
The mural was, I think, 45, 50 feet high behind the main altar of Our Lady of Sorrows Church in Chicago.
Oh, is it still there?
I think so.
Really? Wow. Next time I go, I've never been to Chicago. I'll have to go see if I can find it.
I haven't been back there since, but yeah.
And so, speaking of large paintings, you've told me about this in person, but is there a painting in your mind that you want to do that you haven't done yet?
Oh, yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I want to do a large painting of a dining table with a white tablecloth on it after a very sumptuous Italian meal. And in the middle of it's after the meal is finished. And I wanted to paint, I wanted 2 candelabras of 4 candles each that had just been, candles had just been pinched so that they were still smoking.
Mm-hmm. So that would be fun to paint.
And at one end of the table, with all the dirty dishes on it and everything, would be a plate with a guy who had passed out. His face was in the plate.
I think that would make a really interesting large piece. And goes back to the idea that any subject matter is viable for art.
He could paint it really well. He could.
Yeah. I would like to see that painting. I think that would be really neat, especially to paint the smoke like you were talking about.
Yeah.
That would just be fun to paint. So, so you guys, I just have 2 more questions. Do you want to go for it? Or do you want to take a little break or?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So one of the things you always talk about, Richard, is the importance of drawing every day. And I want to, if I can share something personal, and if you're okay with that, I know you and Nancy draw cartoons to each other every night.
Yes, we do.
Can you guys talk about that a little bit? And we'll show some on the screen for people to see.
You want me to talk about it?
Well, yes, because you guys draw them.
Maybe I can start because I felt it was very important to, before you go to sleep, now this is years ago, at least 10 years ago, maybe 15, 20, before you go to sleep, to have gratitude, to laugh, to smile. Very important to have a good night's sleep and then wake up with that gratitude again. And so I started to leave jokes next to him because a lot of times I went to bed earlier than he did. And sometimes I'd hear him laugh, but I'm not very good at jokes. So I started to do a little cartoon. You know, drawings were easier for me, even as a child. So I would do little drawings, and then all of a sudden I'd see little drawings when I'd wake up. He'd put one there beside me. So I'd wake up with this joy. And we weren't doing it for a reason except for this personal fun a journey together, and to go to sleep and wake up with such joy. And then it just got more and more fun, and he was so good at them that it pushed me to get better and better and funnier. Or he would take something so simple that would happen with the cats or something, and it would be just so hysterical. Or even political, or even something sad that would happen. He could capture it so beautifully. How would you talk about the drawings?
Oh, the political ones were fun because
but there was always something that would happen during the day. Many of them he has.
Yeah,
There's one I'll show that's hanging up. He would say, he'd draw him and peace, Nancy, peace. You know, peace. You know, it was.
We were always drawing pictures of the cats.
Oh yeah. I was just. I'd like to ask you. I mean, for me, it just. I didn't know how much it would push me artistically, but also go into my day, or also what do I want to share, or how can I make him laugh, or it just widened my mind, my soul, and my artistic possibilities. How did you see it all? I mean, I didn't know it would give me all of that, and I got better and better. I was not very good at this at the beginning. How would you, in retrospect?
Well, it's, you know, I always love this phrase about life. Whenever something unpleasant was going on, especially something political, there's a phrase that I always liked, and the phrase is, "This too shall pass." Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. But just so we remember it after it's passed, we would draw a picture of it.
Yeah.
And we go back and see it. And it's so interesting to go back. We have boxes and boxes of these drawings that we made.
I hope you guys do a book someday of them.
Remember what was going on. I mean, it was...
Yeah, thanks for offering to share some of those with people, because those of us that know you personally, they're so beautiful. They're all over your house. These little cartoons and notes. And I think they just speak to the joy of creating. And so one last thing I want to ask you about is just, I often think that all of us as artists, we have moments where we look up into the sky as a child. We dream about what we want to create, whether we're a painter, a musician, or, in any type of medium. But you both actually had paintings that went into space.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
And we had ours blow up the first time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the International Space Station, really.
Yes, yes.
We met a man at one of my shows who was a physicist, who knew of my work, and we became friends. And he had a lot of students who did. His students were science students, and they created experiments that which he would get installed onto the International Space Station, and then he'd get feedback from there. And then somehow we got to talking, and he said, "How would you like one of your pictures to go along with that?" So that's how we got our paintings on the International Space Station. And the first one, when it came time, we did pictures. Nancy did beautiful pictures of a girl looking at the stars or something. And I did a picture of the Santa Maria, the Columbus's boat when he discovered America. So, and I thought, these are voyages of discovery, except it's outer space instead of ocean. Well, the first rocket that went up didn't make it. I'm trying to, connect with the rocket. It exploded. So we had to do it all over again. We had to do
Oh gosh.
the second set of paintings.
Now those have to be the smallest you've ever done, right?
I mean, the thing is
They were.
We said yes, and then he told us how big they were to be. 1¼ by 1¼ inch.
Oh my goodness.
Richard with so many glasses on with this tiny little thing, because he put it in, we'd be behind the broccoli plant,
Oh my.
wall or anything. And we do still have them. He gave them to us, and we'll let you know how many times it went around the earth, and it was a wonderful joy.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, you never know where art's going to take you, and how wonderful to be up there in space. We felt so grateful.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
So here's a little plaque, and let's see if I can. So
That's how big the painting is. That's Richard's painting. Wow.
And it will tell you how, we'll get you a better one. And I'll bring.
So is that a watercolor? That's incredible.
Yeah, and we couldn't do cadmium colors. Tell her why.
Yeah, there were certain colors we couldn't use because
Really?
the colors contained oxygen or something, some chemical that would react with something on the space station. So we had to use, instead of cadmium red, we'd use vermilion or something.
And we'll give you let's see if I can do it without.
Wow, that's incredible. How did you paint the person that size? Like
Yeah,
half an inch?
It's quite interesting.
That is gorgeous, Nancy. Both of those are beautiful.
Yeah, you can be real quiet. Sorry. I'm going to bring you a cartoon.
Okay.
I'll see. This is just so funny. I mean, isn't
That's great.
it? And then
That's
I'll
wonderful.
show you this one. We might cut this one out because it's just so.
This is Space Station Express. Oh, light my fire. I like that.
I'll appreciate about because of the training I got from Bill Mosby. And then what I learned in the 2 or 3 years after I left the American Academy, I found that I was developing new techniques to add to what I had learned in school and subsequently. And I thought, so I don't forget the things that I had, the way I had painting when I had initially left school. I was adopting new methods, but I didn't want to forget the old ones. I didn't want them to go into some sort of limbo or something. So I dictated how I painted to my mother, who then typed it all up. Okay, this is what I did first to the canvas. This is how I stretched my canvases. This is the painting I put on for an underpainting. I dictated all that in great detail to my mom, who was an excellent typist.
What would we do without our moms?
Huh?
What would we do without our moms?
Without the moms we had.
Yes.
Later on, when I was really on my own and I had my own house and my own little office in the house, I started to, and that was about the time that they started using, that desktop computers came into existence. I started to write alla prima.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Then I started to combine photographs of my paintings with the stuff that I had written. And that's how, then I met Kristen and Timothy, and they knew a printing company in Colorado, and that's how the alla prima got written. Just from me writing down stuff. I couldn't type in those days. I couldn't. I still don't type well now. I was hunt and peck, but
Same here.
I would write it down in pencil, and they at the printing company they had a girl that could translate that into typing, and so that's how the first alla prima got printed.
Wow.
We went into, I don't know, what, 12?
Yeah, no one would publish it, so he had to self-publish, and
Yeah,
we're in our
I paid for it myself.
16th printing. I'll have to look
16 printing. Well,
Yeah.
almost every artist I know has it. It's just like the Bible for painters, because it was the first book I found as a young artist that shared everything about technique. And I remember, I don't know if you remember, when I very first met you, and this was 17 years ago at your show at the Butler, and I brought my alla prima copy to sign, and I was a little embarrassed to show it to you because I had highlighted so much in the book, and you said you loved that I highlighted it, because I was learning from it.
Well, it's true.
But I think you felt, you told me you felt a responsibility that you were given this knowledge. Would you expound on that? And then a responsibility to share this knowledge.
Yes.
Well, I always admired how much you value teaching and sharing your knowledge, just as much as you value your own painting time, which is not always the case with artists. It's so important to pass on the knowledge.
That's right. And that's how great art was created. I mean, that's one of the reasons we have Mozart and his kind of, because people passed on their knowledge to him, and then he took it and ran with it. Oh.
Yeah, and it's so essential right now. I mean, with everything going on in the world, and our normalcy getting interrupted. I know there was an article, I don't know if you saw it, that came out in one of the prominent newspapers saying the most essential jobs, a list, and the least essential jobs. And the most essential, they had listed doctors, nurses during the pandemic. Least essential, number one, was artist.
Oh.
And I thought, I was shocked because, and I refuted it online because I remember you talking about once in a lecture when I first met you, that everything in creation begins with art. From the screen we're looking at on the computer, you said, to the socks you wear, to the car you drive, to the space station. You said everything begins with an artist and that it's essential.
And imagination.
It can't be built unless there's a picture of it.
Yes.
Yeah. And imagination.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
so
That's
is that.
true.
Yeah.
And that's why teaching's so important too.
Mm-hmm.
So just the last question for both of you, to all the people watching. Do you have any messages, a message for the artists listening to leave them with during this time?
A message?
A message for the artists that are listening.
Okay.
Any last thoughts?
Message is, but my message is that someday all this stuff in the world, especially the politics and all the rest of that, someday all of that isn't going to be here anymore. But art will always be there, and your art, all of you out here reading what I'm saying right now, your job will be to create the world we really want.
That's nice.
So that we can see pictures of it. And we can do it. That's my message.
What about you, Nancy? I know you share the same sentiment. Do you want to add anything?
That's so well said. Have gratitude, you know, what you have, if you're able to create, keep creating wonderful, positive things, and share them with the world. Maybe that, let's see. Yes,
I think that's so important to stay creative right now.
Gratitude and the little things too. This is an amazing thing. We're all on this planet Earth, and we need to take care of it and love one another. And whatever it is, an artist, a mother is so creative and artistic, and the cooking and the dressing the kids and all of that. Let's all join together, no matter what color, whatever, whoever you're voting for. Can we all come together and speak together through our art? We all want the same thing in a way. We all want to be loved and heard and
see,
have the pursuit of happiness, you know, and freedom for everyone. And if you do it with your art, if you do it as a mother, as a father, as a smile, the gratitude.
I love it.
Anyway.
Well, thank you guys. This has been so amazing talking to you both.
Okay.
Okay.
And hello, everybody out there. We wish you all the best. Keep painting, keep happy and healthy. We're going to be creating a new world together, right?
We are.
Yes, we are. We're all going to do that together.
Yes.
Peace.